Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Matchbook Horse Racing Podcast. More excellent racing coming your way from the home of jump racing. Cheltenham's got the 2-day December meeting, which features the big handicap of the weekend, which is on the new course as they all are. But it's the Nightingale December Gold Cup. That's the 150 on Saturday. We will be previewing Friday, but in one big section. And then Saturday we'll be doing all of the ITV races. So Donny and Cheltenham taking centre stage there, and some really good handicaps in the main, although an interesting other part than obviously heard as well. But we'll come to all of that. Two proper jump racing experts in situ for us, Dan Overall and Matt Toombs. Welcome along, both of you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, not the two of you, hopefully you already have, but for everyone at home that's listening or watching, it's the best no-cost way of supporting this podcast. Okay, we're going to give you prices at the time of putting them up. You can check insights.matchbook.com for a recap of all of our bets across the 2 days as well. But we're going to start with Friday, so some notebook horses and our best Friday bets. We've got a couple between us. Matt, I'm sort of interested in yours, Bustleton. I was tempted by him for the cross-country race at the November meeting, but he's a fair old price here.
He is, and that's because he was just a fair sixth in November. One angle I like in these cross-country races is to see which debutants in this unique test, it's very different from, say, Banks races at Punchestown, are having a sighter to see if they take to it. And if they do, they're often a different proposition on the second run. Three horses made their debut here in November. Your friend Mr. Coffee, who's on a losing streak of 17 and seems to be enjoying himself. The other two, Statuario is fourth. He looked to take to the test really well, but the ground's officially soft in places. So I wonder if it's gone against him. If he doesn't go on the ground, he's one for the tracker for next autumn's cross-country races if you get good ground, because the festival race, even though now a handicap again, is likely to be a much higher level contest. So the one who did look to be having the proverbial sighter, as you said, is Bustleton, former Kerry National winner, classy horse. He was held up in November, not knocked about, when 17 lengths sixth. Looked to take to the obstacles, the complicated ones like the cheese wedges pretty well. He won't want the ground too soft either, but I think he'll handle a mixture of soft and good to soft. He won off 80 on the flat in the summer, so he still retains his ability. He's a sort of turn of foot, relatively speaking, that's a potent weapon in these cruel sprint events. 16 declared. He looks a good play in the win and place markets. 34.0. He's a fair bit bigger than I expected him to be. And I hope he can leave that November form well behind here.
Dan Overall, welcome along. You've got how many? One or two on Friday? Just the one on Friday?
Just the one, yeah. I will touch on that cross country because I think that's actually one of the races I'm looking forward to watching the most because it's such a big field and there are so many in there that will just be having that sighter. So it's very much one to watch and see what may well turn up in March and suddenly be 20, 30 pounds better. Vanilli, I thought, was really interesting with headgear left off. But the one I've looked at on the Friday, which I think is a tricky day, with likes of Chianti Classico, etc., I think they probably should just win. But I thought Seddon was an interesting prospect in the Veterans Chase of the 225. Obviously won the plate in 2023 when he beat Fugitive and Shake 'em Up Harry. Obviously, Shake 'em Up Harry was 5 lengths behind him. He's now actually £7 better off with that horse who heads the market here. Very strange season last campaign, mixed the flat with conditions hurdles. Then he went over to America for the American Grand National. The yard really last year were a bit of a all over the place. The form was terrible, but he's come back in the early parts of this season and shown no signs of stopping despite being 11 years of age, won twice on the flat, wasn't beaten all that far in a Premier handicap, seems to be as good as he ever was. Had a nice little break as well, which he seems to like. He was off for 77 days before he won the plate 18 months ago. He's been off for 61 days here. He's only £3 higher than when he won that festival race. I say a lot of the horses in here you'd say are probably more 3-milers than 2.5-milers, but Seddon's a proper 2.5-mile horse. Seems to have had his ideal preparations. I thought 7.0 was quite a fair bet.
Okay, and I've got a couple going up on Friday. My starting point for the 115 was that I probably wanted to be against the horse that heads them. So that's Valgrand. I can definitely see why they're coming back in distance. And I'd imagine they're going to have this horse very much on the agenda for a county hurdle, given what the yards tend to do. So with that in mind, I mean, he's rated 139. You're getting well into a county hurdle there. This is a £22,500 race. I don't know. Of course, I can see him bolting up, but I just wonder if there are going to be other days. Then the next in the market is Willmount. Big fan of the horse. For all that, obviously, he was last seen in the Challow and was pulled up. He drifted like a barge on that occasion. But it's been a long time since we've seen him. He might be really well treated. Then you've got a horse like Reckless Eric at 8.0. I think it's a great bet, win and place, because he's very progressive. Wincanton, the start before last, he may well have won before coming down. And then I thought he won really nicely last time under a good Keenan Woods ride. Nice and patient, came around the outside. So I think up £8, he can still be really competitive, Reckless Eric. So I thought he was a good win and place selection. And then Long Draw in the 335. So this features another Skelton horse at the top of the market. And again, Doyen Quest might go and score. He's obviously taken out last time we went to see him, I think on account of the ground. But last time at Cheltenham, he was very good. I mean, he was good value for that. He goes up against Gal Road again, and thanks for the help. And he probably has the beating of both of those unless Gal Road gets an easy. But I did think Long Draw was interesting. He bumped into Hamsian last time, who was a well-treated Tony Martin horse. And, he has looked as though 3 miles will suit. So if the winner doesn't come from that Doyen Quest race last time, he's just a Long Draw I thought was overpriced at 11.0, because he may well improve for the step up in distance, and his form isn't too far short of what I think it'd be needing to go pretty close here. So those are 2 win and place shouts, might double them up, both in the win and the place market. Reckless Eric and Long Draw on Friday in the 115 and 335 respectively. That's Friday done. ITV Saturday. We'll start with the December Gold Cup then. This is the 150. Matt Toombs, you can kick us. I'm glad you both put up this horse, because I will probably back him as well, but it meant I could look elsewhere. What's your trend, Matt, and why Madara?
So sometimes trends illustrate to you a factor you may have never otherwise thought of. Sometimes they reinforce the importance of something you were thinking about anyway. And it's logical that last month's Paddy Power Gold Cup ought to be a good trial for this, and it is. 10 of the last 18 winners, including 5 of the last 7, contested it, finishing 3-1-2-5, 2-0-0-3 F4. So trying to work out which of the Paddy Power Gold Cup runners is going to improve here is a key factor. Historically, the obvious, had they had a run before the Paddy Power, hasn't been as big a factor as you might have thought. 7 of those 10 Gold Cup winners have had run before the Paddy Power, so it wasn't fitness that got them beat in November. But I think it may be a factor this time for Madara. He came over from France last season, trained by Sophie Leach, won the 2 mile handicap on this card last season off 130, then went to Ireland, won the 2 mile 1 handicap at DRF off 133. Both those wins looked to be through stamina. When the gallop was on, Madara looked to be going as fast as he could, but ended up winning going away. Plenty of debate for the festival, Grand Annual or Plate. With the bad ground, he ran in the Grand Annual and just always looked a bit out of his comfort zone. I think there were some admin issues around the licence. So Madara ran for Kieran Burke at Ascot on his first run this season, then went to Dan Skelton, arriving just a few days before the Paddy Power. And Dan did an interesting interview a few weeks ago when asked about the Megson horses he'd inherited from Ben Pauling. And Dan said something like, coming from Ben Pauling's yard, I'm not going to improve them through fitness, as I'd often try to do, so I need to try something different. Sometimes when horses go from a small yard to a yard like Dan's, they do improve for fitness, especially in the early part of the season when horses are generally less fit. And the vibes in the Paddy Powers, Dan thought Madara wasn't fit, having had him only in the yard for a few days. He was ridden out the back as if they didn't expect him to be competitive, but he ran on without being given a hard time. 7 3/4 lengths fourth, £1 lower here off 140. Dan's had another month with him, so there should be no fitness issues now. Often in these races, you have to work out which horses are primed for the day, which are targeting, say, the Plate in March. Given Dan's going all out for the trainer's title, trying to build up a big enough lead so Willie doesn't smell blood in the water, I'd expect Dan to have Madara prime for this. Cheek pieces, which are left off in the Paddy Power, back on. He looks the most likely winner, and I could see him going off a fair bit shorter than 6.5.
I feel like he will definitely go off favourite, even though Fugitive's right up there at the moment. What do you want to add, Dan?
There's not much more I need to add, really. I think that was pretty comprehensive. I think when we go back, I was on the show when we previewed the November meeting, and I didn't fancy Madara that day, but I said he was probably the most interesting horse in here with a view to future races. I was very keen to just watch how he did, and I think no one really missed how well he stayed on that day. And obviously there is a difference between staying on in the race and then staying and proving you stay by actually being put in the race. But as Matt said, I think this is a horse they've never really had doubts about stamina. I think he was actually meant to run in this race last year, but because they had his 4-year-old allowance, he would have been so massively out of the weights and he wouldn't have been able to fully utilise that. They went to the 2-mile route instead. So I don't think stamina is going to be an issue. As you say, a bit longer with Dan Skelton. I think he's going to be no bad thing at all. I do respect Fugitive because I think he obviously shaped similarly encouragingly in the Paddy Power Gold Cup, and you'd expect him to take a step forward as he did last year. But if I'm looking at the horse who has the scope to be even better, it's clearly Madara. Fugitive is probably handicapped about where he is, but Madara could yet take higher rank, I think.
I like Madara, but this afforded me the chance to put up one of the other 2 horses I fancy. Nearly went in Excelsis Deo, who came down last time when he'd shortened up a good bit, and he's obviously a previous course and distance winner. But I thought Galore was just so solid. Obviously, course and distance winner. Last time was given he was well beaten by Iridoto, staying on, but it's quite wide, and he slipped turning for home. He made the odd error on his day off 156. He'll be very, very competitive. Sure, there might be something like a Madara who's better treated in there, but I thought he's a very solid player, and I wouldn't mind seeing him tucked in a little bit more than he was when last seen. Maybe Gary wanted to give a good sight of his fences, but equally, I'm not sure that that's the ideal way to go around Cheltenham. So I thought Garlaw was very solid at 8.0. Okay, moving on now, we're going to go to Doncaster, 3-mile handicap chase, where you 2 have found one at a big old price. Dan Overall, come in first of all.
Yeah, I'm going to have a poke at a couple here at a big price. I think it's a decent race. I'm not sure many are excessively well handicapped, so I thought it's one of those where it could well side to play one at a big price. And the first one's Earn River. To describe him as in and out would probably be quite generous because he is a bit all over the place. He's pulled up on his last 3 starts, but it was a similar story last season when he returned to Doncaster and first-time cheek pieces saw him win off a mark 134. And surprisingly, he actually did back that up again at Doncaster when he's only beaten 6 lengths off 137 in the Great Yorkshire Handicap. A pretty competitive race that was. He's now down to a mark 132 with Tom Broughton taking £5 off. So he's undoubtedly well handicapped. Tom Broughton's actually profitable to back blind in over fences, as a point-to-point background, has been quite successful on the rules thus far, particularly over fences. Blinkers now go on for the first time as well. So a bit like last season, it's the first time headgear angle. He's back at Doncaster. He's clearly well handicapped. You're never really sure what Earn River's going to turn up, but he seems to turn up here and he's clearly handicapped to win. So I think he's an interesting proposition, probably a win-only one based on his general record. And then Strawfan Jack is a horse I've struggled to ever get right, but I thought he was a really eye-catching third in the plate last season on slower ground, which he probably doesn't really want off mark 133. Really stayed on that day. It was for a horse that probably does want further, but he's completely untested this trip, and I do think there's reason to expect to improve from it. His Dam won over 2 miles and 7 furlongs. A Bonanza Boy is in her pedigree. Obviously, that was before my time, but I think he won a Welsh National and a Midlands National. So plenty of stamina there. He's by Geordie Land, and his top jumpers include Trelawn, who's a bit of a stayer, Geordie B, who was a stayer, Charlie Uberallis, who's in this race and is a stayer. So I think there's plenty of reason to expect Strawfan Jack to actually appreciate 3 miles. I think he's often over 2.5, looked like he's flat out all the way. Say that run in the plate did suggest that he has a big handicap in him, and I'm hoping this will be the one.
You've got another one in there, Matt, but you can by all means... oh, no, you've got another one in there, Dan, haven't you? But Matt agrees on Strawfan Jack.
Yeah, and very much for the same reasons that Dan said. One, about the pedigree, and secondly, about the fact he's been staying on in his races. Troubled passage in the plate between 3 and 2 out, switched outside, then back in again, used plenty of energy and stayed on. A bit of a concern about stable form. Sheila Lewis only had a couple of winners this season, both in October, but the context is she only had 9 all last season. It's harder to tell the form of smaller yards. They've only had a handful of horses capable of winning. So 26.0 for a horse with top festival handicap form earlier in the year, that's a risk I'm happy to take. So I'm following Dan in both the win and the place markets here.
And I followed you in on Earn River on the Match with Zero long shot, which we will come to. Who are you? Would you be more confident on, Dan?
For a horse I think will run his race and has probably more place potential, Strawfan Jack, but for pure win, I'd probably say Earn River just because of his profile. But I'm quite happy to play both in a race like this at those prices. Yeah,
like the headgear going back on Earn River. I thought that was interesting. 17.0, Strawfan Jack 26.0. My best bet also goes in this race, which is Does He Know? Again, I thought he was just very, very solid. Obviously knows how to win round here. I think he's run 2 good races of late. It's just he's been taken on up top. And yes, there's other bits of pace on here, but he's back to his last winning mark. At the course, it was over. And a nice, forceful ride here. I think he will... I still think he's run well the last couple of goes. And it wouldn't surprise me if he goes in here back at Doncaster around about 8.0. But I thought he was a very solid win and place bet. Does He Know? 225 at Cheltenham, 2 mile handicap chase. Not for me, thank you very much. Matt, you can kick us off.
Yeah, trappy, isn't it? I can understand why it'd be a no-bet race for some people. 6 runners, you make a case for all of them. The one that intrigues me is Third Time Lucky. Won the November and the Lightning 3 seasons ago as a novice. Looked to get found out as a short finisher, top 2 mile company. Decent handicapper the following season, won at Sandown of 143, 11 lengths fourth for 149, the Grand Annual, keen on the soft ground and hampered by a fall or 2 out. He made 190 grand at the Goff sale at the end of the summer as a 9-year-old. As we've seen with Coolwell dispersal sales, sometimes big sale prices don't equal success, but that did suggest that some who think he's retained his ability. Made his comeback in a similar race last month off 145, ridden to have a good experience. Down to 142 now, £11 below his peak mark. Now, whether he's being targeted the Grand Annual rather than this race, I don't know. But the nice ground here ought to suit him better than the bad ground we so often get at the festival these days, especially on the old course. So I'm hopeful Fergal's targeting Saturday. These talented short finishers often improve with age as they mature and stay further. Captain Guinness, Specialty R examples at the top level. So I'm hopeful Third Time Lucky will get home. And if he does, he could prove well handicapped.
Dan.
Yeah, like Matt said, this is really trappy. I think my thinking with my selection Triple Trade came from looking at the others, and I thought potentially here had the less to prove in my eyes. Like Liberty Hunter is probably undoubtedly very well handicapped. I just have my concerns about, is today going to be his day? See, Master Chewy, tough task to carry 12 stones 7 days after falling into Tingle Creek. He's a horse I like. I just think that's quite tough. Issair Dairy had everything in his favour at Newbury, and he ran really averagely, and cheap pieces now go to. Third Time Lucky is fascinating. He just needs now back up what he's shown. And again, is today the be-all and end-all for him? He definitely has a lot of potential still. And Etalon has gone out like a light twice now, and I'm struggling to find a reason to forgive those. So I came to Triple Trade in what is clearly a trappy race. He's dropped £5 in 2 runs this season down to a mark 130. That was the same mark as when he won on the old course, the 2 mile handicap at the November meeting last season where he beat Calico. Despite winning on the old course, I think he's undoubtedly more of a new course type of horse. Like he's definitely a stayer at this kind of trip. He's won over 2.5 miles in the past. Runs this season haven't been great, but not devoid of promise either. He looked in need of it first time out. He just tied coming to 2 out, was given a conservative enough time after that. I think he paid for trying to pressure Sam Brouet at Ascot, where the front 3 probably went a fair old gallop, and Martator and Cop Mask, who were first and second, were held up and benefited from that. He actually travelled pretty well into that, just tired, understandably, I think, under those tactics. He's clearly handicapped to win again, and I just found that I had less question marks about him and his intentions, because I think at this stage of his career, he's very much just trying to pick up races he can win, and I think this is one of them, and I thought around 10.0, that was a fair enough price.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly tricky contest. That's the 225, and I feel the same about the 240, the Mayor's Hurdle. Matt's written West Balboa wins provided chasing hasn't affected, and I have to agree. But obviously, not the biggest field, and where is West Balboa going to be? What's the target on the horizon? You imagine back to Aintree. It doesn't mean she won't take this, but you've got one at a bit of a price here, Dan.
Well, that's it. You exactly mentioned it. West Balboa on peak form wins this and wins it quite comfortably, but you have to have doubts about whether that's going to be the case. Obviously, chasing doesn't work, and I'll always forgive horses who just don't take to chasing going back over hurdles. Obviously, they tried her at 2 miles last time. That was never going to work. But you do have to wonder, are there targets in mind down the line? Obviously, she was a bit disappointing mid-part of last season. We saw Katira happened with her last season, obviously beaten at quite short odds and then went to Aintree and won quite comfortably. Obviously, West Balboa was third in that Aintree handicap, the one she won the previous year before. So you have to question what version of her is going to turn up. And if she underperforms, I do think Why Not can be the one to take advantage, because I think in her own right, she's an upwardly mobile mare. She started by winning at the October meeting under Alice Stevens, who takes a ride here, made her win a handicap, which was quite a game performance. Similar tactics tried last time at the November meeting in a deeper race. She was picked off late by a trio of more conservatively ridden challengers there, all progressive geldings in their own right, including Long Draw, who obviously, Tom, you mentioned earlier, as for a race on the Friday. And she was giving them all a minimum of £11. So I think to only be beaten a few lengths, having forced the pace there and almost looked quite vulnerable, I think that was a fair effort. She's untested this trip, but you look at the way she finished here in April behind Betty and Golden Ace over a stiff 2.5 miles. I think that augurs well for her chances. She does have that to prove, but she's a half-sister to a 3-mile winner by Chaparelli, and they tend to develop into stayers. You look at the likes of Ronald Pump, Indefatigable. I think they'll probably ride her positively, which again in small fields I do quite like. And I think all conditions really are there for her. Say she is still lightly raced, she's progressive, she seems to be improving run on run. And if West Balboa underperforms, I think she'll be the one to take advantage.
The 3 o'clock at Cheltenham is up next. Matt and I with bets here, and we're not with Skyjack Hijack. I think Skyjack Hijack is the perfect type of profile that I would just naturally want to take on, probably stupidly, having won his last 6 and looked very good, winning 9.5 lengths last time at Newcastle. Maybe it's the sort of the back end of the summer campaign that puts me on the right. I don't know. Maybe he'll go and win. But I liked what Clondor General did last time at Worcester when I thought it was a really strong staying performance. That's a real galloper. That was on debut for the yard. I think he might have quite a bit of talent as well. Obviously, this is going to be a huge step up. And even getting £3 from Skyjack Hijack, he's going to have to show a lot more than we've shown on that occasion. But it's just his profile of, well, I suppose they both could be anything. But I was taken with the manner of the sort of relentless staying performance it was from Clondor General last time. So I'm siding with him at 4.0. And Matt, you're looking at an even bigger price.
Yeah, well, one with some related form, actually. But on Skyjack Hijack, I agree with you. He's hugely likeable, but it'll make them all go. The Bristol's produced 4 Albert Bartlett winners. This is likely to be a totally different level of opposition to what he's faced so far. But he is very important in the race because jumping is therefore going to be important. He's as good a jumper as you could want to see in a race like this. And he puts novices under plenty of pressure, albeit new course, third last, about 7 furlongs from home. They've got time to get back into it. But even so, and you're also going to need to stay very well. These grade 2, 3 mile novice hurdles are often run very steadily, not as stiff a test of stamina as you might expect. But with a gallop he's going to go, you think it will be a test of stamina here. And I'd be worried about Western Knights jumping. He's looked really novice on his 2 runs. Clondor General actually beat my selection about damn time, 3.5 lengths, Cragmore and a point. Form looks decent, 12 length fourth, won a maiden hurdle at Limerick. Both of those two, Clondor General and About Damn Time, won their only start under rules. About Damn Time won a 10-runner maiden at Carlisle last month. They went steadily, and the front pair did well to pull nearly 10 lengths clear of the favourite Dedicated Hero, who then bolted up at Kelso next time. The runner-up, Kevin's Pride, hosed up on his only previous start in a bumper for John McConnell. He's a short price favourite in a 205 at Bangor tomorrow, so you can watch that and get a line on the form. About Damn Time jumped pretty well on that hurdling debut. It's by Flemonsfirth out of a Cape Tara mare. Her other progeny include Worcestershire and Timely Gift, whose best form were in 3 mile chases, walking time, best form in 3 mile hurdles. About Time is bred to improve a fair bit for this sort of trip. Reports about his homework have been good. He just looks too big a price in a race where Make Good and Redford Road have won at double figure prices in recent years. So I'll take a chance on him.
Okay, that's the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. And then we move on to the 2 mile contest at Donny. Matt's sitting this out. Dan, you and I without a belly, mainly because I put him up when he was Harry Fry couldn't get to Sandown. It was Sandown, wasn't it? Didn't get there. Yep. So I've really fancied him last week. Of course, good form in the book though, this horse, and went pretty well fresh last year. Still relatively lightly raced. So he's sort of screaming out at me off a mark of 130.
Yeah, he's one of those where it seems like he's been threatening to win a really big handicap for ages, but then you realise it was only his second season over hurdles last season, and perhaps because he went off relatively short prices for 3 big handicaps and didn't win any of them, he was a bit disappointing. But this is a far cry from those types of races he was in last season, I think. And outside of the Betfair hurdle, where it came back where he wasn't 100% right, he's been pretty consistent. He was second to Knickerbocker Glory on his seasonal reappearance last season, who is a freshness soft ground specialist who had the running of the race at Ascot, and we often see there. If you're out in front, it's hard to peg him back, and it was quite a respectable run to finish clear of the last there, I thought, from Altobelli off 1-3-1. Then only beating a length and a half in the big 2 mile handicap at Ascot, which obviously a race that often works out well. Again, I don't think tactics really suited him there because they went quite slow. He was a bit keen, and that is a bit of an issue. He does tend to be a bit keen. He does hang a bit, but again, that solid form off a mark 132. It's a lot easier race, and he's down here up to a mark 130. I don't think he'll ever get a better opportunity to land a decent 2 mile handicap than this. Harry Fry wouldn't exactly send many to Doncaster. Maybe, again, it's because options are running out, but it's a 250-mile journey away from his yard. So it's a long journey to take him on. And from those he's sent up to Doncaster, he has a 28% strike rate, actual over expected figure of 1.24. So despite often being short prices, they actually do outperform expectations. I thought his current price of 4.5 is actually very generous, given he's been around that price for deeper races than this. So if he doesn't win this, it's time to abandon ship with him. But he gets one chance in here where I think the opposition aren't as deep as he's used to competing against.
If he can get a recent win into My Eye, he can get a win into Altobelli, surely.
That is true,
335 Mares handicap hurdle. 3 different horses going up here. You've got bigger prices. I'll start with the obvious, which is Joyeuse. Every now and again, one of Nicky Henderson's rocks up in a handicap, and you just think 119 surely is better than that. I really liked the winner, Celtic Dino, last time at Ascot. I think that was a decent little race, and the hope is that this mare improves for a step up in distance, but I think she should on pedigree. I know she's related to Epatone through the dam side, is probably out and out 2 mile, but there's definitely scope for an extra half a mile in there, I thought, and I feel like she's really well treated off a mark of 119. So Joyeuse for me, but you two are looking away from the obvious. Matt, first of all.
Lost me, Tom.
Say again. No, you're there. Come back.
Sorry, there was I'm going with Woodoo. The 4-year-old form is absolutely red hot, almost unprecedentedly so. 2 of them ran in the Galway Hurdle. Nürburgring and Derby finished 1-2. Burdett Road won the Great Wood. Sagino won the Fighting Fifth. So you can imagine with those group of horses having basically run against themselves all last season, quite a lot of them are well handicapped for the non-pattern handicap hurdles as well. Carlo Conti ran a good race when winning at Down Royal. And Woodoo's unbeaten 5 starts, beat Nürburgring and then lost it on appeal later on. He's rated 150 now. Then later on, she came over, had a couple of races over here, long odds on in female juvenile hurdles, and won easily. So Gordon Elliott said he thinks she's a really well handicapped mare off 130, and yet she's 15.0. I thought she'd be second favourite to Nicky's mare here. I can't believe she's the price she is, with gun conditional Danny Gilligan claiming another £3. In a win and place market here, she must be a cracking bet.
If you thought she'd be second, it's a massive price.
Yeah.
Woodoo. Who do you like? Another big price for you, Dan.
Yeah, I think this is a really good race, actually, for its type. I think this will work out well. I think even when you look at like Luna Discovery, who's 41.0, she definitely has races in her. I think this may be a bit deep, but back on heavy ground later in the season, I'd keep an eye on her. Completely respect Joyeuse, Tom, as you mentioned. She could just be a potential blip in here. Like, that was a really good run last time out. Her form with Tutti Quanti and Into the Park stacks up. So she has the potential. She does have stamina to prove, I guess, would be the concern, but no surprise if she leaves mark 119 well behind her. But say, as the win and place proposition, I thought Endless Escape at around 15.0 was really interesting. But she got to a rating of 127 as a novice. She only finished 10 lengths back in 7th in the Mares Novice Hurdle at the festival a couple of seasons ago. And last season, as was the case for many of Ben Clark's, it just didn't really go to plan with her. She didn't exactly take to fences that well, but she did run really well in a handicap hurdle over course and distance in April when she was third off a mark 119. So that ties in with a couple of horses who also line up in opposition here. One of them was Pretending, who won that race off a mark 109. Endless Escape is £11 better off of her here. And Georgie Girl was 14 lengths behind Endless Escape, and Endless Escape is now £2 better off with her. So I think when you look at the weights and measures, I can't believe Endless Escape is a bigger price than both of those. She ran really well on her reappearance over 2 miles at Ascot, where understandably she was a bit outpaced, but stayed on at the end. Headgear was left off there. Tongue-tie and cheek pieces go back on. And Ben Clark, generally speaking, has been in a lot better form this season. Since October, he's had 4 wins from 20 runners. Plenty more have been hitting the frame at big prices. I thought for a mare who has course and distance form, is weighted to go well with some of her rivals who are shorter in the betting. I thought, again, she's a decent win and place proposition. But I think that speaks to the depth of this race, where you could probably make decent cases for a few of these.
Matt, with your Cheltenham hat on, I think it's the only hat you've got, but with your Cheltenham hat on, just clear something up for us, because Tom's been saying he's on Shamblu anti-post tomorrow. On Saturday on Madara 11.0 for the December Gold Cup, massive eye catcher. Marco responded, new course favours front runners, Tom Leach, and also says, sorry, the new course is more stamina, not as sharp as the old course. Shamblu would be better suited by the old course, in my opinion. Now, what's your take on that? Because I know I can remember plenty of Festival Thursdays switching to the new course where front-running chasers have come massively to the fore. Old course, new course, more of a front-runner's paradise, or is just Cheltenham over fences underappreciated as a front-running track?
Yeah, definitely more so, I think, on the old course because it is sharper. But it also depends on the nature of the race. So, for example, in the Ultima, it's the first race for a lot of the jockeys. They tend to go too quickly. And so horses held up have a good record in that. Whereas those races that start in the middle of the course, like the Ryanair and the Plate, and then you've got that big sweeping bend before they get out into the race course proper, they tend to be sometimes a bit more steadily run. And it's an advantage to be up the front, even though that you're on the new course there.
Okay, I hope that helps, chaps. So that's us done as far as our preview goes. So we've got any other bets, first of all. I'm going to, and I don't know the price for Buxy des Epres or Epres, but I was pretty taken with what he did over fences. Basically, the story here is ever since he ran at Sandown last year over hurdles on Tingle Creek Day, I think it was, he's been a horse I wanted to side with, and it hasn't really worked out. But I was pretty convinced he was well treated. And then, of course, it all came together at Ascot over fences. I think he's just a much better looking chaser. I thought that was a pretty smart performance. And he's only up 5. I thought he won fairly easy last time. I don't think he wants deep ground, but it should be okay. Even though he's got form on it at Sandown, I thought he looked really good when winning on good ground at Ascot. I don't know where he's going to be in the market, but Classic King was a good winner last time, could well be up there. So he'd be up there. But I think he's, I'd be expecting he wouldn't be much shorter than sort of 4.5 or something like that. I'm hoping there's a bit of openness to this 9-runner contest. And Buxy des Epres, I thought was interesting, the 12.25 at Doncaster. Dan, you've got one for us on Saturday.
Yeah, the Mayor's Handicap Chase at Cheltenham, Coco Mademoiselle, who was around 6.0 when she opened. I think she's already getting shorter, which was kind of the reason that she stood out to me at that kind of price. I think she's now around 4.5. That would be the minimum I'd want, but she's all over a chaser. She made a really good chasing debut when losing ahead to Hometown Boy, who has a rating 142. Because it was the type of race it was, she couldn't be affected by any handicap changes. So a mark 122 has been left untouched. She was only getting £13 from Hometown Boy, and she was £9 technically wrong with him if they were to meet in a handicap. So every reason to believe that was a really solid run. And I think she probably should have won that. The third was We've All Been Caught, who went on to be second in the novice handicap at the October meeting. Really good run. I don't think she was really given everything that day as well. But back against mares, I think slightly down in trip is not going to be an issue because she travels so well in her races. They've said in stable tours this could be a mare who goes on to compete in some of those listed races. There's plenty more to come from her. I think she'll make a mark 122 look quite lenient. I say 4.5 now as the price contracts would be the minimum I'd want. So just one to keep an eye on in the market there.
All right, Matchbook Zero long shot. Matchbook Zero goes live an hour before each race, or the race that you're looking at. Best place for a win bet because you're most likely to be getting best odds with zero margin and zero commission. Mine is the 205 at Donny. It's one of the horses that Dan put up, and it's Earn River with the blinkers on. The last success came here with cheek pieces going on. £2 lower than that, blinkers on, even though he's pulled up his last 3 starts. I thought it was worth chancing at the prices. Dan?
I'll go with Why Not in the listed Mares Hurdle in case West Balboa underperforms.
And Matt?
Woodhoo in the 335 at Cheltenham on Saturday. If you agree with me, I'd take the 15.0 now. I can't believe she'll be anything like that price.
And you've got a lay for us as well, which fits in with another trend for that Nightingale December Gold Cup.
That's right. The trend is that this century, winners of the Paddy Power Gold Cup have finished 4p 1505 p6743 in this race. So very different for the overall record, but it's been the beaten horses in November that have come on and won here. The average rise those winners got was £7.7. Iridoto's got £8. The only horse this century to do the double was the proverbial Grade 1 horse in the handicap, Exotic Dancer. And after 21 chase starts, Iridoto has no Grade 1 pretensions. He looks handicapped out of this, and I'll lay him in both the win and the place markets.
Good old Exotic Dancer. I think he took a right old hike as well, didn't he? £8. I know it was pretty comfortable, but I thought that was on the steepish side. And then we come on to best bets. Mine's Does He Know in that staying chase at Donny. Matt?
Madara in the December Gold Cup. As I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes off a fair bit shorter. So he's another one I'd go in now on.
Madara would have been yours, Dan, would it not?
It would have been up there, yeah. I mean, to be fair, right, to duck and dive, I think Endless Escape would have been my best long shot as well. But I let Matt go first, and that happens. So my best bet in the end went to Outer Belly. I know, well, you were very bullish about Wadu as well, to be fair. So I definitely wanted to leave that one to you, to be fair. So Outer Belly is going to be my best bet in that 2-mile handicap at Doncaster. If he's going to win one, I think it'll be this one.
Good stuff, Dan. Matt, thanks ever so much. Don't forget to check out our Insights column, which will have a recap of all the best bets and all those prices we put them up at. And hopefully you have an enjoyable and profitable weekend between Cheltenham and Doncaster. Bye-bye.